I've been debating whether to say this or not. I've been preaching for 32 years and more, but 32 as a Unitarian Universalist. I still get butterflies before Sunday morning. And so when I used to travel to a place for the first time, I told this little story, kind of an icebreaker. I told it once. I told it here at the very beginning when we were just getting started. I told it once to a group of Florida ministers who were evaluating me. And one of them said, "You need to take preaching lessons." So I'm going to tell you the story. I used to tell folks that I felt a little bit, when I got up on Sunday morning, that I felt a little bit like the man who went to the psychiatrist's office. And he said, "I'm a wigwam. I'm a teepee. I'm a wigwam." The doctor said, "Relax, you're 2/10."
That was my father's favorite joke. Oh my God.
There's a reason I needed to tell that. And yet here, I'm still here, so. I began my Unitarian Universalist ministry in 1992. The previous winter in the congregation where I had been a member for 5 years, which was the Church of Jacksonville, a significant number of people had begun to express a desire for more spirituality in the church. A panel of 4, including myself, was invited to lead a worship service to address that topic. We spent 30 minutes that Sunday debating the meaning of spiritual, and that was the last I ever heard of the issue. I guess that's why it's said that given a choice between heaven and a discussion about heaven, well, we know what Unitarians will choose. Defining spirituality is a bit like asking a Zen person to define enlightenment. Any definition is always limiting. Words can only point. One of my favorite little quotes is from Hugh Prather, who said, "Don't bite my finger, look where I'm pointing." Don't fight about religion and faith and God. Look where I'm pointing. Growing up, my family and the Baptist Church both shared the point of view of Chief Joseph that we heard about of the Nez Perce. We do not want to argue about God or religion. My mother would intone that any time the discussion got around that. Of course, what that meant in the Baptist Church was do not ask questions. We take it all on faith. Don't question authority. But I love to argue religion. I love to debate, discuss, question, challenge. That's why I love the spiritual leaders of the Old Testament. They argued even with God. Jacob, we're told, wrestled with God, literally wrestled. They despaired and they pleaded. They struggled and moaned under the weight of spiritual understanding. How else do we grow and mature spiritually if we are not allowed to find our independence? Mother Teresa witnessed so much suffering and injustice that she felt a hollow absence in her soul and doubted God. In my Bible, I keep one of my favorite prayers. It's from Thomas Merton, who after 15 years of quiet meditation and contemplation and the monastic life could say, "My Lord God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think that I am following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. But I believe believe, said Merton, that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I do. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. Thomas Merton, Mother Teresa, the Hebrew prophets, they were not engaged in academic criticism. Spiritual life flowed not just through the mind for them, but the heart, the soul. For Zen masters, it's the hara and the actual very breath of life itself. Merton expressed that passion for pleasing God. And what does the Bible tell us over and over that pleases God? Quote, "Does the Lord take delight in thousands of rams, in rivers of oil? Shall I present my firstborn for my rebellious acts? What does the Lord require of you?" wrote the prophet Micah. "Only to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God." We please God, whatever that is, by serving others. I think of that great Universalist, Phineas T. Barnum, who said, "The noblest art is that of making other people happy." The UU minister, Mendelssohn, called spirituality, he wrote this book, Being Liberal in an Illiberal Age, required reading for UU ministers. He called spirituality a way of walking and acting in the world. In his book, he writes, "For me, the fundamental question of life is not why, but how. Ask not what is the meaning of life, but how shall I live?" Rolling Thunder, a Shoshone medicine man, said, "Understanding is not about knowing the kind of facts that your books and teachers talk about. Understanding begins with love and respect. It begins with respect for the Great Spirit. And the Great Spirit is the life that is in all things. All the creatures and the plants and even the rocks and minerals. Respect," said Rolling Thunder, "is a way of life." For a long time, I have been committed to a way of life which I refer to as voluntary simplicity. It is a term I borrowed from the title of Dwayne Elgin's 1960s era book. Elgin wrote, "It is not so much our thinking about the interconnectedness that makes a difference, but the actual experiencing of that interconnectedness." In other words, we are defined by how we live, by what we eat, how we clothe ourselves, the jobs we hold, the companies we endorse with our buying and our lobbying powers, the groups in which we participate and to which we lend our names. That great existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre said, "We are our choices." You may believe that the earth is a mother spirit or not. You may believe that the bears and the beetles and the rocks and trees are our relatives or not. These native myths, beliefs, and oral traditions are simply pointers. The question today is whether there really is a spiritual common ground beneath our feet. Christian, Jewish, atheist, mystic, humanist, Buddhist, scientist, and earth-centered traditions all converge and collide within our Unitarian Universalist web. This All Souls congregation, excuse me, this congregation and 1,000 others covenant to create a shared vision out of these building blocks. So I would like to offer a brief synopsis of Native American or earth-centered spirituality, and I would like to suggest some ways I think it may be possible for us to, quote, meet on spiritual common ground to build our shared vision. Peggy Beck and Anna Walters wrote a book called The Sacred Ways of Knowing. In it, they outline 6 concepts which most Native Americans share in their shared practices and rituals and traditions. Now, that's saying a lot, considering there were thousands of indigenous tribes who inhabited this continent before the white invasion. If they can meet on spiritual common ground, perhaps there's hope for us yet. I'm going to offer 5 of these 6 concepts that I think we either do or can share spiritually. First, they share a belief in the existence of unseen powers. These powers may take the form of deities, or maybe more of a feeling that something exists and is sacred and mysterious and bigger than ourselves. The way the seasons change, the way the sun moves across the sky, growth itself, the germination of seeds is part of that great mystery. Our world is very different, of course. Indigenous people were immersed in nature, constantly in touch with creatures in the sky and the earth. They slept on her, lived off of her, depended entirely on Mother Nature. We are manifestly divorced from nature. Our world is human-made. Climate control, population control, pest control. We subsist on a cosmic principle of domination. We bear witness to the death of mystery. Unitarian Universalists, however, refuse to be totally alienated from wonder. We join Sierra Club and Audubon, support Greenpeace, or advocate for the environment. We camp, we hike, we ride our bikes. We spend our time in nature. We may not call it God. Actually, neither did the Indians. But we find we can at least acknowledge a power or authority that is beyond and bigger than ourselves. The second concept common to indigenous traditions is all things in the universe are dependent on one another. We are all related and must therefore be constantly aware of how our actions will affect others, plants, animals, people, or streams. Sound familiar? Our 7th principle was powerfully influenced by the Indian way of life. In the list of sources that we claim as foundations of our UU faith, the so-called 6th source honors the, quote, spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions, which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. A third concept, basic to native traditions, is how they choose to worship, both personally and collectively. For American Indians, there is an essential link between personal worship and community health. Worship makes us more receptive to life's blessings. It nurtures healthy relationships with others and with that great mystery. Worship is a way of giving thanks and centering ourselves. That word, worship, carries unwanted baggage for many of us. In fact, members of this church have told me they don't like it when I use the word. I don't know what to call a worship service, but give me something and I will try it. I'm so used to it from my Baptist background. Perhaps we must replace that word and talk instead about honor or respect or deep attention. The Beck and Walters book suggests that most Aboriginal cultures follow certain ritual procedures to prepare the mind and body to become spiritually receptive. 3 of those rituals are purifying, meditating, and sacrificing. In purifying, you erase your thoughts. You get rid of the poisons and excesses in your body through such things as sweat lodges, bathing, or smudging with incense. You empty yourself. Through meditating, you pray or call out for power and strength. You invoke the mystery, that unseen power. You pray for others because when they are stronger, you are too. By sacrificing, you take something of yourself and give it away. This is a very deep ritual in the Native tradition. The giveaway, the potlatch ceremony, in which they give away everything they own. You do so because you know that you are connected to everything else. They also believed that material possessions held them back and choked their spirit. Sister Jose Hobday was born in Texas to a Seneca Iroquois mother and a Southern Baptist father. Jose Hobday was both a Seneca elder and a Franciscan nun. She became a full-time lecturer, and for decades she gave workshops across the country on prayer and spirituality. Her book, Simple Living, is about moving through life rather lightly, delighting in the subtle. Jose writes in her book that to achieve compassion and joy, we have to give away our possessions. Try to be as poor as possible. Let go of power and control. I've done that pretty well, I think. And seek radical dependence on God. I love this term, downward mobility, she calls it. And voluntary poverty not only remind us of our need for God, but counter our reliance on corporations, fueled by greed, Wall Street values, and consumerism. At an Earth Spirit conference I attended on the bank of the St. Johns River, I met Sister Hobday, who offered a humorous take on the subject of why Native Americans were so willing to assimilate Catholic Christianity into their spiritual life. The rituals, she said, were very similar. Indians smudged themselves with sage and cedar and sweetgrass. Catholics wave their ball of incense. Both of them use holy water. Catholics sprinkle it, Native Americans drink it. And confession is the Catholic version of a sweat lodge. She says it's a different kind of sweating, but the goal of purification is the same. The fourth common element in Native practices is the teaching of morals and ethics, and we're high on that one. These moral lessons were actually behaviors for the Native American that were essential to survival in the natural world. Unselfishness, awareness, cleanliness, and others. To survive, you needed these morals and these values. Much like Unitarian Universalists, natives had no concept of heaven or hell to keep people in line. There was an easygoing and natural quality to morality because they felt life is hard enough without invoking harshness into their spiritual teachings. What a blessed world. Fifth and finally, most Native American traditions reveal that humor is a necessary and vital part of the sacred. They share a belief that human beings aren't bad, but they are often weak. Our weakness leads us to do foolish things. So, in the Native tradition, clowns and comic figures are needed to show us how we act and to relieve the tensions in life. So they had their sacred fools and clowns who taught us not to take ourselves too seriously. There's no mention of this in our principles and our purposes or our values, but we definitely have our fools and clowns. I think our sacred fools are, of course, our ministers. Who else would take this job in a liberal denomination which despises being told how to do anything, eschews leadership, and disdains authority? As for the sacred clowns, well, I look forward to hearing from some of you about that. Amen.